So, this thyroid surgery started by Fyodor Kochers and in 1881, you all know. And he was very famous, but unfortunately at that time the mortality was very high. So after him, the surgery was stopped. But the Charles Mayo, he listened that thyroid surgery has been going on and very famous in Europe. So he came from USA to learn this thyroid surgery from USA to Europe, and he learned this technique and went back to the USA and teach everyone how to operate the thyroid. So he became the father of American thyroid surgery. So after around 100 years of this open thyroid surgery, Dr. Gyan from USA, he performed first endoscopic procedure in the neck. So what he did, first he do the parathyroid surgery. So how he puts the ports and everything, will describe in the subsequent lecture. But he puts directly port over the neck. He was a laparoscopic surgeon, so he put directly ports over the neck and remove the parathyroid. But if you're removing the thyroid during, first he did the parathyroid, then he did the thyroid surgery. So removing the specimen, he has to enlarge the incision. Suppose removing the 2 centimeter thyroid nodule, so he has to enlarge the incision from 1 centimeter to 1.5 or around 2 centimeter. And it was a lateral incision. So for performing to the opposite side, suppose you have to do the total thyroidectomy, then you have to put the same incision on the another side of the neck, or even the same side, putting the 2-3 ports and one major ports at the camera site where he took out the specimen. So there are 2-3 scars in the neck. So Micoli from Italy, what he modified that, he thinks that if you do the Gyan technique, then you make 3-4 scar in the neck. But he makes the central incision, like we are making 2 finger above the sternal notch, making a small incision. So he advised making a 2 to 2.5 centimeter central neck incision, and through that incision dissected by open surgery, and then he put the camera and dissect by, he modified some instrument, he developed some instruments, and then like ligating the upper pole, dissecting the thyroid, everything he modified the instruments. And with his technique, you can handle the both lobe of the thyroid, and its incision is central and small. So this is the evolution, how it started. Then Micoli was become very famous, and he published lots of literature to comparing the conventional thyroid surgery versus video assisted minimally invasive thyroid surgery. So this minimally invasive video assisted MIVAC is very famous. In young patients, still there is scar in the neck, although it is very small, but it is central scar in the neck. So what the Japanese surgeon thought, that if we anyhow, if we go away from this neck, like below the clavicle, if we go below the clavicle, then scar is free of the neck. So what they did, they give a big incision below the clavicle over the sternum. Transverse incision, same big incision, and lift the flap. So it was away from the neck and reaching into the neck through the endoscope and dissecting out the thyroid. So that was remote access approach. So first remote access approach developed by the Japanese. And then lots of different technique has been evolved. So after that, the auxiliary technique, like he put the central incision. So in the central of the incision, over the sternum, the chances of keloid is very high. So they shifted from central to the lateral side. And lateral side, they make a big incision, reach up to the neck. Then further development, that again they go away from the chest wall to the axilla. So they reach up to the axilla, and from the axilla they approach to the neck. So all these development started in the Japan, and from the axilla they reach into the neck. Then few head and neck surgeons or thyroid surgeons or ENT surgeons, they have facing difficulty to reaching from the axilla. Then they evolve and develop this facelift approach. So they give the incision in the backside of the ear that we will discuss in detail in the subsequent slides. But you see how these approaches has been developed. Then into the neck. So from the neck, it is the shortest route at that time. From the ear, directly go on to the thyroid. No important structures came into the picture. So chances of morbidity was less. Then with the auxiliary technique and chest wall, then they combine from the chest wall and axilla, both side the foot, the ports. But what happens in the chest wall side scars? So they shift that chest incision over the areolar incision. So this areolar and axillary technique. So this become popular. After that, some surgeons from US, they tried because the ENT surgeons were doing some transolar, this laryngeal procedure. So what they thought that how to reach to the thyroid. So in the cadaver, in the animal, they tried behind the mandible. Into the sublingual, they open the space, put the camera, and two working port from outside, and they reach into the neck and they successful to dissecting the thyroid. After that, this development started, and it's again further evolved the technique. And this surgeons from Vietnam, he was very famous for this breast and axillary technique. And then Dr. Anuang, he learned this technique from transoral and he modified it. He modified because this movement of the transolar or sublingual approach, the movement of the instrument was very limited. So what he did, he make a subcutaneous plane, like in axillary technique, into the transvestibular. And then he became famous. So this is the evolution of these different techniques. So let us discuss in brief all these techniques. So this is the Gyan technique. So you see this Gyan put directly on the neck and ports, working ports directly over the neck, in the anterior border of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So over the anterior border of sternocleidomastoid muscle, he directly put the instruments and go and dissect into the subplatiform plane of the thyroid. So you see these three ports are still there and incident. So it's the neck, and that is the scars. So this Simuji, what he did, if you see this dotted line in the neck, so this is the line of the cloth. It is covered. So what he did make the incision away from this dotted line. That means this is the exposed area of the neck, and he make the incision away from the exposed area. So this is the hidden area. So whatever scar is there in the away from the neck, it is hidden. And he dissected in the neck and lifted the flap by putting the two K wires in the neck and lift the flap up. So Dr. Simuji developed this technique, and he did the parathyroid first from this technique and then the thyroid by enlarging this incision or making two incision on the both hidden area side and removing the thyroid also. So this technique was totally gasless dissection away from this exposed area of the neck. So scar is hidden, but because this is the chest area and this is very well vulnerable for making development of the keloids or hypertrophic scar in the neck, so there are lots of complications with there. So that's why this scar is shifted from this area to the axillary area. So you see the Ikeda, what he did, he shifted that scar area from chest wall to the axilla, and from there he put the three instruments and dissecting and reaching up to the neck and removing out the specimen from the axilla. So this was the technique which was popular, the axillary technique. And then the Terris et al. From the neck. So you see the incision from the posterior part of the auricle go into the hairlines of the neck. So this is a big incision, but the scar is hidden by the hairlines or under the hair, so it is not visible. But there is over the mastoid. If you see the below the ear, the over the mastoid, the flap is thin. So chances of flap necrosis on this area was very high. And if there is a flap necrosis, the scar is very bad and it is visible. So that was the limiting factors of this. And here is the cutting of the greater auricular nerve also. So it makes the numbness over the ear, and sometimes hypertrophy scars, its scar become visible. So these are the limitations, but this is the shortest route. If you see, if you open this flap, you just directly reach after the sternocleidomastoid muscle, you directly reach over the thyroid. So by this technique, you can do the thyroid, and this technique is also very much popular, mostly among the ENT surgeons or head and neck surgeons, because they are very much familiar with the anatomy of neck. So these two techniques, whether it is axillary technique or this is facelifter, these two approach are from the one side. So they go from one side, remove the thyroid from one side. Although after getting the experience, most of the surgeons doing total thyroidectomy from one side, single side. But for the beginners, it's difficult, and they have to turn the head and making the similar procedure on the opposite side for doing the opposite hemithyroidectomy. So for that, this central approach has been developed by Ogami et al. From Japan. And what they did, they put the camera in the center and two areolar approach. So this is the central technique from where you can approach to both sides of the thyroid. And dissecting the flap over the neck and putting the camera in the center. So this technique is similar as the conventional laparoscopic procedures, like putting the camera in the center and two working ports on the both sides. So making a triangle. So this approach is also making a triangle. So till now, whatever approaches is there, similar. The conventional laparoscopic approach, making a triangle with the camera in the center and two working ports on the lateral side. So by these approaches, any laparoscopic surgeon can attempt these procedures. So if you are trained or if you are doing conventional laparoscopic surgery, like gallbladder, appendix, hernia, whatever you are doing, so in that case, all these conventional instruments as well as your conventional technique, the triangle, the camera in the center, two working ports. So slowly you can perform these procedures. But you see, this technique is putting the gas inside, and this technique also putting the gas inside. So at that time there was, because this was evolution phase 20 years back, so there was complications of gas, like CO2 intoxication, CO2 embolizations, and subcutaneous emphysema. So lots of complications was there at that time. Sorry. So Professor Chung from Korea, what he developed, he did the gasless technique, evolved this gasless technique. What he did, he make a 5 centimeter incision into the axilla and dissect out, reaching up to the neck and putting the instrument, all instrument from there, and he developed a retractor, long retractor to lifting the flap. Because before that, although most of the surgeons did the same procedure, but for the lifting the flap, they closed this opening and putting the instruments and closing the opening and putting the gas. But what he developed a long retractor, that is Chung retractor. So that retractor is he put up to the neck, going in between the two head of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So from the axilla, going in between the two heads, lifting the sternocleidomastoid muscles also, and then reach into the neck. And he performed the maximum number of endoscopic, robotic, whatever you can say, the highest number of surgeries in the world. Then after Chung, the Professor Yun is his contemporary, and what the Japanese surgeons was doing. So you know that Korea was like, they have under the rules of Japanese before Second World War. So they have lots of competition with the Japan, the Koreans. So that's why they usually, although they follow the Japanese, like India was under the rules of British, although we go to the UK and learn the technique and then come back to our country. Similarly, practicing by the Koreans. They go to the Japan, learn the technique and come back to their country and start practicing. So Professor Yun was contemporary of Professor Chung, and he learned this auxiliary technique from Japan, but once he came back to his country, then if you see this technique, here the three ports, one is the central port and two into the supraalveolar. But the central port is to the sternum or in the midline. The chances of scar keloid formation is very high. And second thing, it's a three port technique, and removing of the specimen is difficult through this technique. So you have to enlarge this midline incision, and this big incision develop keloids. So what Professor Yun developed the technique that he go through the axilla. So he combined this Ikeda and that this auxiliary technique by Ogami. So Ikeda and Ogami technique is combined and using this bilateral breast and auxiliary approach. So this approach is little bit different than all other approaches because they put the camera in one of the port and dissecting from the other side. While all these before practicing approach was based on the principle of basic laparoscopic approach, that basic triangle, camera in the center and two working ports on the either side. So initially he started like that, means one of the areola he used for the camera and one this and this used for the working port. But it was very difficult actually because one hand from other side, one from this side, and assistant is standing or cameraman is standing in between the two hands. So it was a difficult procedure. So what he modified again, that asked his assistant or cameraman to go stand on the opposite side and he start working from the two sides, like urologist in retroperitoneoscopic. What they perform, these two working port is similar and the camera is away from that. So they not following that conventional triangular laparoscopic approach. So similarly, Professor Yun also modified, and he modified that camera person is standing away and his work used two ports for the working. So initially, he used 5 mm camera. So all ports are 5 mm except this 12 mm for the working as well as removing of the specimen from this side. And also if you use some clip applicators, 10 mm, initially at that time the 10 mm clip applicators were there. So you can use this 12 mm port. Nowadays these 5 mm clip applicators are also available. So there is no need of putting any 12 mm. So you can operate all these by the 5 mm ports also. But for the removing of specimen, you have to little bit enlarge the incision. So these are the evolution of the laparoscopic surgery. Although there is further evolution and further advancement of different techniques, because these procedures are initially started for benign lesions. But now, as the more and more malignancy is coming and the surgeons are performing more cancer surgeries, and the indication for benign surgeries has been vanished off gradually. So in Western world or in any developed world, this benign thyroid nodules is smaller. Even in the malignancy, they are observing. So the indications of benign small nodules is very less. But in our country or some developing country, they have still large benign goiters are there. So initially, this indication of this procedure was lesion up to the 60 millimeter in size or volume up to the 60 ml. Some low risk malignancy at that time, 1 to 2 millimeter young patients, means low risk patients, they can operate through this endoscopic approach. And of course, the patients give consent or they interested in endoscopic thyroid surgery. So nowadays, because more and more malignancy are doing, so there is some hybrid techniques are developed to dissect the neck, to approaching from the transoral to the this transaxillary, combining both techniques. So lots of hybrid combinations has been developed or evolved, but it is not practicing too much because robot came and he minimized the use of these hybrid techniques. So all the developed country, they are using now robots. They switch over from endoscopic to the robotic surgery. So most of these evolutions have been not very much popular. So this is the indication. But nowadays you can, as I told, that evolution is there and lots of hybrid techniques has been developed. So limitation is just your imagination. If you can imagine that I can do this, so lots of hybrid techniques are there, and if you want to perform endoscopically safely, then you can perform, but at least you have the knowledge of that technique and you have practice of that technique. Then only you can do, otherwise there is limitation. So this is the common indication, but you can perform with the bigger size, benign goiters, or even the initially the thyroiditis. Contraindications include the thyroiditis or toxic goiters, Graves' disease, large Graves' disease. Those were the contraindication at that time. But nowadays, these can also be performed. So it depends on the expertise and depends on, because initially, you know, this technology was also not very much developed. Like at that time, single chip camera, then 3-chip camera came, then 3D, 4K. So these evolution in technology also making feasible to these endoscopic surgical procedures. So how it was difficult in the initial phase. So that we'll discuss. But still there is limitations of these techniques. Like selection of patient for the beginners like you. If you want to do the endoscopic procedure, so you have to select your patients. Do not attempt laparoscopic in each and every patient. You have to be selective. Select a small benign nodule. If you beginners like Sunil is going and he want to do the practice, so he have to select a small 2 centimeter up to 2. No thyroiditis, so he have to check biochemically rule out thyroiditis. He have to do the FNAC, rule out the thyroiditis. It should be benign colloid nodule. Then ultrasound. So by this, he has to rule out all these things. Thyroiditis, we rule out, avoid first the toxic goiters, rule out thyroiditis, not attempt in malignancy first time. So small up to 2 to 3, you can, means depends on the neck size. select a female, sorry. So female with long neck, small thyroid nodule, benign, no thyroiditis, no toxicity, and no suspicion of malignancy. So this is the selection criteria. So if you select this type of patient, you will be definitely become success. So selection of the patient is important. So this is the limitation because you can't perform the endoscopic procedure in all the thyroids. So for Sunil, you have to be very selective for the initial few cases. Means at least 10 cases you perform with the small thyroid, and then gradually you increase your size. First, 2 to 2.5 up to 3 you can operate. Then go up to the 3 to 4 centimeter. Don't go beyond 4 because the vascularity, everything become higher. So first up to the 4 centimeter you try after 10 cases, and then once you do the 20 cases, you become confident. Then gradually you can increase the size and increase the indications. Similarly, prolong operation time. So you need not to worry about the time, first time. If you are operating first time, don't think about the time. Just think about the safety, think about the precise. So go slowly, dissect slowly, and don't see towards the watch. So time is not, time should not be limitations for your procedure if you are doing first time or in initial 10 cases. So prolonged time is there, although in the expert's hand time is high, but nowadays in transvestibular time is almost equivalent, or in sometimes it is lesser than open thyroid surgery. So time is limitations. Then more invasive procedures, like all these techniques, whether you go through the axilla, chest wall, even in the vestibular procedure. So it is device is there. So if the pressure is high, it automatically stop or automatically reduce the pressure. So lots of development in the technology also. Then separate instrument, separate, like if you are doing some special procedure, then need special instruments. Otherwise, even if you are doing and this endoscopic procedure, some instruments, extra instruments is required than the open thyroid surgery. Like all the laparoscopic procedure, but not for the basic. It is advanced endoscopic procedure, so you need advanced instruments. Although like conventional laparoscopic instruments are sufficient for this endoscopic thyroid procedure, but that conventional is for advanced laparoscopic procedures, not for the basic. In basic laparoscopic procedures, you have using cautery and scissors, but here you need some type of higher end this energy device. Learning curve and skill. Learning curve is there, but nowadays because of the high technology and lots of interest in the surgeons, initially they are scared whether this is techniques is useful in the field or useful in their career, but nowadays they have enthusiastic learning enthusiasm, so that help in their fast learning. And also the techniques, like we have higher end energy device, higher end camera, everything is higher end, so each and everything is visible nowadays. Initially in single chef, if there is a small bleeding, the whole area become dark and it's not visible, nothing is there, and this energy device was also not very much cumbersome for dissecting. The jaw size was not very friendly for this thyroid surgery, but now everything is evolved and it is very helpful for thyroid surgery. So now learning is not very much difficult. So if you raise 10 flaps and then start closer, 10 midlines open, 10 midlines closer, then at least in 30 cases you become comfortable for doing this laparoscopic or endoscopic thyroid surgery. Extra cost with no advantage in complications. So extra cost is involved definitely in this technique, but advantage over the complications. It's not going to reduce the complications, what complications happen during the open thyroid surgery. So if you, the complication wise, there is no advantage, but the rest thing is definitely there is advantage because of advancement of the technology. If you see nowadays, if you are operating the 4K, that every small structure is visible very clearly, even whether it is recurrent laryngeal nerve, superior laryngeal nerve, parathyroids, vessels, superior, inferior, every vessels, even you can see the flow of the blood in the veins, whether it is middle thyroid, inferior thyroid veins, the flow of the blood itself is visible. So that is not usually possible in the open thyroid surgery, even if you are operating with the loops, because of the high lights. So development of technology in the lights, camera, instruments, energy device, everything is advanced now. So it's easier to do the surgery. So these limitations are no more limitations nowadays if you are working in a good center. So for Sunil, you start doing in a good center, and definitely you will do. You have done the lots of procedures. Unfortunately, this lockdown, you are not able to complete any procedures as independent, but you have exposure, too much of exposure of this, so you should confident and go and operate. Just select the patients, not look over the time, use the high energy, means higher end instruments, and definitely you will do it. Complications, definitely the usual complications which is happen in the thyroid, that open thyroid surgery or conventional surgery, that is there with the endoscopic thyroid surgery also, but nowadays these complications are less. But there was some special complications or some unusual complications have been there, depends on the procedure, type of the procedure, and depends on the skill of the surgeons initially. So hyperesthesia and paresthesia in the neck, definitely it is there, but believe it, after 3 months, most of the this complaint is over. And if you are operating in the right plane, then definitely there is no complaint after 3 months. If so ever, if any patient's complaining, then it is over by 3 months. The keloid formation depends on the site of incision, but nowadays, if you go through the axilla, not coming into the chest wall, so very limited exposure of this type of complications, like keloid is nowadays is not seen in our patients. Emphysema, definitely it was there initial phases, but as I told that instruments are advanced, and also the techniques we have evolved. So this emphysema is also less. But injury to the surrounding structure like internal jugular vein, trachea, carotid vessels, brachiocephalic vein injury. So these are chances of there, definitely. But if you are careful, because nowadays if you are working on the 4K or higher end 3D HD 4K or HD cameras, then I don't think if you are careful, then these complications are very less. But definitely, if you are operating on cancers, then these complications, chances of these complications may be there. But for the beginners, if you are selecting small cases, small thyroid nodules, then chances of these type of complications are less. The injury to the traction injury to the brachial plexus, definitely if you are doing that auxiliary technique and hyperextension of the arm, then dislocation of the shoulder and traction injury to the brachial plexus, and also raising the flap through this long cautery pencil. So sometimes there is perforation of skin and all these things are there. So these are some unusual complications, but happen. But if you are careful, you can avoid these complications. So there are few popular techniques are still practicing. All lots of other techniques are not much popular, but these auxiliary and breast approach, bilateral breast and auxiliary approach, transorovestibular approach, facelift approach, these approaches are still popular, and this transorovestibular is becoming the more and more popular nowadays. So this was the evolution of the endoscopic thyroid surgery. So if you have any query or questions, you can ask, or we have some times, so we can describe little bit about basics. So then we discuss some basics, and then so come to the surgical technique per se. Anesthesia is required is general anesthesia, so all procedures require general anesthesia with single lumen fluxometallic endotracheal tube. But nowadays, this neuromonitoring is essential for all the endoscopic procedures because of the litigations. Like in pre-operative, we do the direct laryngoscopy or indirect laryngoscopy in all the patients. So similarly, during the surgical procedures, you have to use this neuromonitoring system. Then instrument, although no special instrument is required, but you need a good laparoscopic instruments, telescope, common gas insufflator, light source. So during selection, like selection of the patients, you have to select your instruments also. So use the standard set of laparoscopic instrument, but a good company is required, good brand of the instruments, or you have to check by yourself because you can't the chance. Even the laparoscopic instrument, if it is too much sharp, then like Maryland, if you are using the Maryland, if the tip is sharp, then it can injure to the surrounding structure. Or if the jaw is very blunt or very rough, then even if you are dissecting, it causing the injury or oozing to the surrounding structure. So if you use the good company instruments like Carl Stores and others, Olympus, so these instruments are very good, and even Escolab. So by using, even if you select 2-3 instruments only, you don't buy so many instruments, and you start with 2-3 instruments, just one dissector, one grasper like thing. So you start with those, but instrument should be very precise, and it should be from the branded company, or it should be sharp and is clear. It should not be like jaw is not working. Sometimes if you are struggling with the instruments, then definitely the output would be poor. So you should not struggle with the instrument. You have to be good quality instruments to begin with. Then telescope. 5 mm 30 degree or 10 mm 30 degree is good enough, and you use the telescope and try to work on high definitions. So high definition camera with 30-degree telescope, 5 mm or 10 mm is good enough. Then gas insufflator. Usually this is a small space, so require less amount of gas. But because of this small space, we need continuous irrigation or continuous flow of the air or gas in that space. So it removes all fumes from this closed space. So that's why the high flow insufflators is required, or high capacity insufflators like 35 liters or more is required, like in bariatric surgery, the high capacity insufflators. So similarly in thyroid cases also, if you have small capacity insufflators or you are a beginner, you take a longer time like 6 hours, 7 hours. So these insufflators become exhaust and they stop working. So you have to be careful. Since beginning, you take a high capacity insufflators, not the less capacity like 20 liters, 15 liters capacity insufflators. So that is also very important. Initially, we have struggled a lot in our center, but nowadays we have high-end, high capacity insufflators, so we don't have this type of problems. Similarly, the light source. So higher end light source is required because this, it is a closed space. So even a small oozing, if you do not have this xenon light or cold light, then it causing the burn to that area. Even delicate structures like this, our nerves, recurrent laryngeal nerve and other. So it can injure through the thermal injury may be there. So light source nowadays, cold lights, very good cold lights are available. So it is not a problem nowadays, but still you need a higher end light source. If you use this poor light source, then it is not visible properly, and also if there is a oozing, the light is absorbed and area become dark. So auto-focused, auto-adjustable light source is required. So these things are small things are important. And then the instruments, as I told, that you have to be used good quality instruments. Not very much instrument is required, but quality should be good. So use hook, needle holder, grasper, dissector, and crocodile forceps, and energy device forceps. So few things is required. Scissors and needle holder, Maryland for the suturing and all these things, and then dissector and grasper is for holding. And this crocodile forceps is atraumatic holding forceps that is very good for holding the thyroid, and you can say alligator forceps also. So this alligator or crocodile is very useful for holding the thyroid, although we don't have in our department, but it is very useful. And then extractor for the specimen. Although if you don't have, it is not very much required, this extractor, because you don't want to crush the specimen and you have to take out the specimen through the bag. So this is very useful, not very useful to use this extractor. So if you don't have, then you need not to worry. You just use the alligator forceps for holding the thyroid, dissector for dissecting around the thyroid, grasper to holding the other tissue like sternocleidomastoid muscle and all these things, and needle holder and scissor, needle holder for suturing the midline and scissor to cutting the suture, and then hook to opening the midline and dissecting the other adhesions or other tissues around the thyroid. And energy device, definitely it is required, whether it is bipolar or this ultrasonic energy device. These things are useful for handling the vessels or vascular structures. So these two energy devices very much popular. One is ultrasonic, one is bipolar. So these instruments also evolved, and these two are very much useful in thyroid surgery. Both have advantage and disadvantage, but it depends on how you are comfortable. Both is perfect for this thyroid surgery. And like in ultrasonic, there is jaw is this active jaw is very sharp and very much comfortable to go into the small area, and there is two side jaw is available, 5 mm and 7 mm jaw. Now the 7 mm jaw is advanced and the 5 mm was initial in Johnson & Johnson. So what is important is that this, if you are working, if you are a beginner, the 5 mm you use only 2 or 3 mm. So you catch the tissue with 2 mm and cut it. 2 mm, cut it. 2 mm, cut it. Like that. Not holding the whole 5 mm, using the whole 5 mm. So that is, if you are using the whole 5 mm, in that case, it is not perfectly coagulated or not perfectly, the hemostasis is not perfect. So chances of oozing, bleeding, and also the complete 5 mm is not visible by you. So you may injure some important structures like vessels or nerve. So you have to become, for the beginning, you go bit by bit, 2 mm or 3 mm, not more than that. So that is important point. And for this harmonic or ultrasonic device, or similarly for this. But what is the limitation is that at the end, 1 mm of this tip is lack of blade. So it coagulate more but cut less. So you have to know this point that the blade is not going up to the end. So it is coagulating and cutting less. But the power of coagulation is more in the bipolar instruments than this ultrasonic, but cutting power is less. So they have sliding cutting blade is there, and it going just little bit 1 millimeter behind the tip. So cutting is, sometimes the cutting is not complete and chances of bleeding is there. So you have to be careful if you are coagulating any vessels, coagulate with the center of the tip, center of the jaw, not the tip of the jaw. So these two instruments have this difference. Otherwise, both are good and both have a good hemostatic property. And also, if you comfortable with this bipolar ligature, so this is also a good. And the near the nerve, you have to avoid these both instruments, especially if you are using this ultrasonic. So avoid this active part of this ultrasonic. So use the active part towards the nerve side and away from the nerve. Always catch the tissue, lift away from the nerve, and then cut it. Similarly, if you are using this, catch the tissue, lift away, then cut it. So these are some safety points. Then CO2 insufflation. We have insufflator and keep the pressure lower side. 6 to 8 millimeter pressure is required. So either keep 6 or 7. You may go up to the 8. It depends on the size of the flap. Flap size, thick patients, so like male patients, short neck, then require higher pressure. If large flap, thin, means long neck, large flap is there, then even low pressure, the area is adequately visible. So for the visibility, you have to adjust the pressure. Either you increase the pressure or decrease the pressure. So, but if you are increasing the pressure, so keep in mind, don't keep it for longer time. So if you are, suppose, some upper pole you are dissecting and the flap is not adequately raised and it is hindering the vision, so at that time you can raise little bit pressure and handle the upper pole, cut it, and then reduce the pressure. So like that you can adjust uh, accordingly. So in the beginning you can adjust the pressure, but start with 6 mm, and once suppose the uh, sometimes difficulty in visibility, then you increase the pressure little bit, and then not for the longer time, for few minutes, and then come down like that. Similarly, the flow, because we have to continuously release the gas, so the gas change is very fast because closed space is there, so we have to clear the fume. So I used to continuously this releasing of the gas slowly. So what happens? It requires high insufflation flow. Otherwise, this pressure will not maintain. But the flow is, you cannot go very high flow for longer time. If you increase the flow rate for longer time, so the loads of gas will exhaust, and also if your insufflator is not a high capacity insufflator, then it stop working. So you have to careful for the setting of flow rate also. Although it is required higher flow rate, but capacity of the insufflator is also important. So you can increase up to the 10, 12, 15, but careful if the duration is not longer. If your duration is longer, if you are a beginner, your surgery is longer for 4 hours, 5 hours, or more than 2 hours, then you have to keep flow rate little bit lower side, not very high side. So these are the tips, and next time onward we will describe about the individual techniques, how to do it. But I hope today I have discussed about the how to evolution of this endoscopic or laparoscopic thyroid procedures, and what are the minor tips for the instruments. So if you have any question or query, you can ask, or we can close it. Thank you very much.